Thank you to Bridie and to Louise for inviting me. I feel honoured that I'm your first speaker. I haven't actually really worked out what you're here to do or who you are, which is always quite difficult when you're trying to write a speech, when you're not quite sure what the end result of that is. So maybe you can sort of, if I'm boring you or if I'm going the wrong direction, you can just sort of shout or go and have a drink and then come back and you'll see if it's getting any better. Because I'm going quite a few different ways over the evening. One of the things I think that struck me on my way here was that I've worked for 25 years, and it wasn't Saatchi and Saatchi, by the way, because I think they started that about 50 years ago, and I'm not that old, but it was M&C Saatchi. It was the second version of Saatchi and Saatchi. Is that I've worked all my life in London. And London, there is a vibrancy of thinking in London. There's think tanks, there's inquisitive media, there's global organisations, strategy units, you name it. It feels alive to thinking. One person once said to me that in London you don't need to read a newspaper because it's like living in a newspaper. And I feel that a lot of the things, the ideas that I've been able to sort of introduce and be part of my career really come out of that, hubbub that goes on within London. And I think Full Circle is a great idea to sort of get some of that thinking, get some of that vibrancy into Brussels, and I really hope that the initiative works. So, what did I do this morning? Well, I woke up at the same time. I had exactly the same breakfast that I had for nearly about 15 years. I took a pretty similar route to work. Even on my way to work, as I went past particular geographical points, it reminded me of the same thing that I thought the day before that I had done that particular route. And I respond to the same things in the same old way. Now, I hope that this doesn't mean that I'm going to be nullifyingly boring this evening, but it's really to start to say that we are hugely creatures of habit, set in a pretty fixed framework, that even with the overwhelming evidence that we should change, we rarely do it. 90% of our decision-making in our lives is either done automatically or unconsciously. And therefore, to change the behaviour of an individual is incredibly difficult to do. Well, why should this matter? Well, whoever you are, be you a business trying to sell new products, an NGO trying to get support for some change, or perhaps a government trying to even make things better. At the heart of them all is an interaction with an individual to persuade them to change their thinking and potentially their behaviour. Sitting in Brendan's vast office this afternoon, he's got 6 windows, by the way. I mean, this is really powerful stuff. He explained to me, or tried to explain to me, what he was here to do, and we got onto this pipeline, gas pipeline. He said it's going to cost 40 billion euros to build a gas pipeline from somewhere to enable us to get more gas. And if that money was given to us for double glazing, we wouldn't need that gas pipeline. But we can't persuade people to change their houses, so it's easier to build a 40 billion euro gas pipeline and shove loads of gas through it so that we can stay as we are. So even Brendan is a behaviour change specialist, even though he didn't realise it until this afternoon. So we're all in the behaviour change business. And not only are we all in it, but actually it's the tricky bit of what we do. Because status quo is pretty easy. If you want to do what you did the day before, it's not that difficult going along on a straight line. But when you actually want to change something, if you want to change the people around you, if you want to change the opinions of people that you're working with or dealing with, that's the difficult bit. And not only is it the hard bit, but it's also fabulously irrational. And in a way, that's what's exciting about behaviour change, is we can't just think in a rational way and get to the answer and know it's going to work. back to Brendan for a moment, you can tell people you'll pay for their double glazing and their bills will go down, and they still won't do it. So, what do we know about behaviour change? What don't we know? And what are we going to do about it? Well, in the end, the best starting point for behaviour change is business. Because it's all about getting you to change your behaviour and buy something that potentially you didn't even know you wanted, but they're very, very good at it. Funny enough, they're good at it for a number of reasons. They're good at it because actually what they're trying to persuade you to do is not that important. It's not life or death. They're trying to get you to buy a shower gel that you haven't bought before. It's not life or death. But by finding an insight, like you're going to smell nice, you're going to be more acceptable to the opposite sex, procreate, leave a legacy on this planet. Yes, they've found a way through to you and you'll be buying droves of this stuff. So they take an insight, they intellectually and emotionally engage with you, so you buy that product. They're providing the rational and the irrational in the way that they do that, in perfect harmony. Now, always when I have examples, when I come to something like this, it's always quite difficult because we're all from different countries. But there's only one I could think that we probably all know, and that's Coca-Cola. And we've all heard of them liking to teach the world to sing. Brendan, are you going to sing the tune or not?
I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
Enough. So yes, it was about refreshment and it was all about, but actually it was about togetherness, and it was the sort of the warmth and the emotion that came with that. So you had the two things coming together, the rational and the irrational. The reason why business is so good at behaviour change is that if they don't persuade you, they wither and die. Let's take Kodak, for example. Unfortunately, they thought we would stay loyal to them as we had bought our camera equipment and our photographic equipment with them for 150 years. Unfortunately, we didn't, because we can now use our toothbrushes to take photos. We can use our phones to take photographs. And they didn't keep up with the times, and therefore we walk away from them. So advertising, marketing, design, and brilliantly insightful product solutions have fabulously honed behaviour change to help us change our behaviour really rather a lot, considering how difficult it is. 2 weeks ago, I found myself in an Apple store with a product in my hand that I had just spent £350 on that I thought I really wanted. But I had no idea what I was going to do on it and how it was going to help me. But I just needed to have this product. I was excited by it. Now that is genius, absolute genius. And I think that we've got a lot to learn from businesses who do that. They're good at it, but they're learning all the time and getting better and better, maybe slightly worryingly. Little things, I love some of these examples. There was a wine shop that started playing French music. They sell 5 times more French wine as a result of playing French music when you go in, when you don't. Ryanair. Who loves Ryanair? Nobody. They're absolute genius business model. They make you buy a product at £10, and you've done all the hard work of putting your name in and buying into the idea of your holiday. They then make you pay for your seat, then going to the loo, then your baggage, etc. And in the end, actually, they make you pay about the same amount that British Airways would have done in one cost. But you're part of it. They drag you in and keep you in there. And the power of personal investment. This is another genius insight that IKEA had about 20 years ago, which is if you make something, if you're involved in the making of a product, you are going to love it and cherish it and make sure you're going to keep it forever because you're part of that process. My other favourite behaviour change example was one from America, was a shopping trolley. And they put a sticky tape down the middle of the shopping trolley and put vegetables on the left-hand side in words and other on the other side. And they sold 14% year on year more vegetables as a result of one piece of tape and 2 bits of paper in each of the shopping trolleys. These are very powerful tools that can help us think about how we get to do things, not just from a business perspective, but maybe in other ways as well. What makes behaviour change easier from a business context is that there's an end point. You resolve the behaviour change by buying the product. And so they've got a much easier task than society has. So let's take smoking. Take out the addictive part of smoking, and it's still easier to change someone's behaviour to take up smoking than it is to get them to stop. Why? Because there's a resolution of one of the ways, as in you get a cigarette, you've resolved the behaviour change. When you try to stop smoking, the resolution is not there, there's a void. And therefore it's much less satisfying for the human as a process. And that's why we're seeing things like e-cigarettes and all these new ways, because they're trying to find tangible resolutions that mimic what the cigarette is doing. So it's easy when you've got an end point, and that's an important thing to think about as we move forward. So when people realised the power of advertising and brands to change behaviour, they thought, right, well, if you can sell products and get people to change behaviour by buying products, why don't we use this on the big issues of the day? As a government, I want people to be healthier, so I'm going to use advertising and tell them to be healthier because it makes sense. And over the 60s and 70s, many governments around the world tried to use advertising as a persuasive tool. And in many ways, it was very successful. In my own company, Saatchi & Saatchi, there were 2 brilliant campaigns that I'd just like to say quickly. One was the pregnant man ad. I don't know if any of you know about this, but absolutely brilliant. It was a man who was pregnant to try and get men to start thinking about the issues around sexual health, etc., and was incredibly powerful. And the second one was an anti-smoking campaign that Saatchi & Saatchi ran. Now, we're used to smoking campaigns being all about, well, if you smoke, you die. If you're 16, you never think you're going to die. Period. We were all there. We were 16 once. There's no point in telling a 16-year-old that you're going to die if you smoke. But if you tell them that they're going to taste awful when they have their first snog, they might not do it. And so there was a brilliant campaign, the kissing campaign, about trying to persuade teenagers not to smoke by telling them how revolting their mouths tasted. So some of the insights about behaviour change that worked in business started to work in some way in advertising, and there was some success, normally when it was aligned with some sort of regulation, and we've seen that in many countries around smoking. But to be honest, it didn't work particularly well. And that's because when the government tells their populace to do something, they normally want to do the opposite. And also, it's really expensive to advertise. It's an expensive thing for business to do, but at least they're making a profit. It's very expensive for a government to do. And at the moment, as we know, there ain't too much money around. 4 years ago, the British government closed down the Central Office of Information, which ran all of these campaigns simply because it had run out of money. And so we needed to find new behaviour change methods that weren't expensive, that could still do the same job. Whilst I was at Saatchi, we realised that government needed these new tools to change behaviour, but also business was looking at ways that it could show that it was having a more positive role in the world, which broadly came under the category of corporate responsibility. And so we set up a company called Good Business literally to do that. So could we find businesses that wanted to say something about the values that they had in particular areas and align that to some of the issue areas that, that society was trying to resolve. One quick example, Boots the chemist as a pharmacy. They have, basically there's a chemist on nearly every high street in the UK. They have makeup counters. The ladies, and it's predominantly ladies who do the makeup, were asked, each of them, they were trained in breast cancer awareness by the government in order to ask each person, as they made them up, very casually in the discussion, have they had a breast cancer checkup recently? And if not, perhaps they could let them, you know, there's a place down the road, and they had the knowledge of what they could do and how they could do it. In 1 year, there was double the prevention in terms of people being caught early for breast cancer as a result of that one program. That's good for government, good for the NHS because costs went down, brilliant for us, the citizens, because more people were surviving this horrific disease, fantastic for Boots because it looked like they were caring, looking after your health, giving you something interesting to say rather than where would you go on your holiday in the last, you know, in the last things. So when you get these things right, where you find a behaviour change issue that society wants to change, that business is interested in being part of, a partnership between the two is incredibly powerful. Dove, Campaign for Real Beauty. There it is, natural cream, supporting women's empowerment and women's confidence. Hugely powerful campaign, millions of women, 25 million women involved in it around the world. Very powerful in terms of giving women the confidence and the belief in themselves, and making Dove now the biggest cream brand in the world. I think it was in 4 years, it increased 750% in terms of its sales. Yes, it delivered a societal issue and it delivered a commercial issue. Great win-win on both sides. Final example in this area, Ariel washing powder. They did a campaign across Europe called Turn to 30. The idea very basically was you don't need to wash your clothes at 40 degrees. You can save carbon by reducing it, and it's still going to wash whiter than our competitors. Brilliant environmental message, brilliant product message in terms of getting people to realise that their product was better than everybody else's. This is just genuinely clever thinking on both sides. So lots of these things work extremely well. It comes from someone that consumers already like. Brands, curiously, companies are trusted as little as politicians, but brands are trusted as much as citizens. So, which is quite weird, but it's how we do it, because we deal with brands, we buy them, we buy our Kellogg's Special K, it's what it was the year before or the day before, and therefore we feel we can trust them because they always talk to us in the same way. So can we use that trust on particular issues that are relating to them? Now, there are many challenges, though, when you bring businesses into tackling social issues, and I'm not going to go into them all today. But if you take, for example, that Nike's aim is to get 1 billion more people into sport, well, surely that's a very powerful concept. 1 billion people healthier, more active, less dependent on the medical sector. There's a powerful social aim in there. Or is it a simply greedy, profit-making business that's trying to get a whole billion more people to wear their ridiculous shoes and tight shorts and run around, you know, trying to look gorgeous? Which one of those is it? Or does it matter? And in a sense, I think it's important that we start to think beyond structures of business and government and NGOs and start thinking about how we can together find things and solutions that we actually want to achieve. So when we were looking at this idea that brands were a powerful force for social change, a man called David Robinson, who has a slightly quirky title, which is community worker for Britain, runs a brilliant community centre in East London. He said to us, well, if you think brands are so bloody good, at changing behaviour, why don't we just create our own brand that can do that job? So we said, fine, let's do that. So we created a brand called We Are What We Do. And its idea was that it would engage with millions of people to make small changes in their lives that together would make a big difference. And we launched the company with a book called Change the World for a Fiver, and it was 50 ways to change the world in very, very small ways. And your notepads you have on your table are care of We Are What We Do. We sold 1.5 million copies around the world of Change the World for a Fiver. It captured the imagination of people because it felt that it was positive, it wasn't negative, but positive solutions that we could all do to make a difference. It wasn't about, they need help over there and I'm going to be charitable over there. It was a recognition that actually we could be the change we wanted to be in the world. Akka, Gandhi, etc. So it was a very powerful motif. I'm going to pick one of the things because it always captures, it stays in my mind, because the moment I was told this action, I've never done the thing since. So some behaviour change does work, which is each of us uses a swimming pool of water a year by leaving the tap on when we brush our teeth. And once you know that fact, I promise you're standing there in the mirror and you've got the thing, and it's like, literally, ever since I've heard that fact, I've never, ever brushed my teeth without turning the tap off. Maybe you were all brilliant and don't do that, but I was obviously one of the swimming pool people. So what was interesting about We Are What We Do when we created it is it captured people's imagination intellectually, but actually we didn't see enough change happening as a result of it. So people got behind it. They thought that it was great, and they loved the ideas, and they supported it. But the messages just didn't translate into action. One of them did, obviously, but not enough. And that was because there was no resolution. So we thought, well, actually, we've got to make these simpler and less intellectual. And we've actually got to create products and services out of the behaviour change. So rather than giving people an intellectual idea, we need to give them a product or a service which creates the change. Now, there are lots of things that do that without even thinking about it. Skype, what a brilliant invention. They didn't make Skype to reduce business travel. Skype has reduced more business travel than any single thing that's happened in the last 10 years. But they didn't set out to do that. So the question is, can we work it the other way around? Can we say we want to reduce business travel? Can we find a product or a service that's going to create that behaviour change? It's what we call the incidental effect. So rather than being explicit about the behaviour change, you're implicit about the behaviour change and you put it into a product or a service that then creates the change. Out of We Are What We Do and the things that we've done, we then persuaded the British government to set up the world's first behaviour change unit in government. And the behaviour change unit, or the nudge unit as it's annoyingly called, is about how government can, within government, use behaviour change to create the changes rather than through regulation. So, the first thing that they did, example that they used, was on organ donation. Again, sorry, it's a UK example, but it's a UK organisation, this one, I suppose. Organ donation, 80% of people agree in principle that it's a good thing. 15% of people carry an organ donation card. So, when you now sign up for a driving licence in the UK, question 36 says, are you happy to donate your organs? It's a separate process, nothing to do with organ donation, where you're asked a question which 80% of people agree with, and now, curiously enough, 25% increase in organ donations over the period that that's happened from the people who have filled in the driving license. So finding tiny ways that you can see where a behavior change can happen by finding solutions that enable the change to happen. Not too intellectual, just finding ways to make the positive behavior happen. So another We Are What We Do product that we developed was a thing called I'm Not a Plastic Bag. And it was a very simple idea. Anya Hindmarsh, brilliant fashion designer. I see you've got Vivienne Westwood coming, which is far more exciting than me, coming to another one of these dinners. Anya Hindmarsh, bit like her, but not so messy. She created I'm Not a Plastic Bag, and it was this wonderful cloth bag that we sold in Sainsbury's for £5. It said I'm Not a Plastic Bag on it. So there was a product, there was a resolution, but it also said something about the people who were going to buy it. We sold 30,000 of them in a 2-day period. Everyone went mad for them. One more We Are What We Do product. History pin. So, generations aren't talking to each other enough. How do we create a behavior change where we get young people talking to older people more often in a positive way? 5 minutes. I'm going to go. How do we get them talking to each other more? Well, we did a partnership with Google where we took Google Maps and said, let's create a historical Google Maps. So you put your photos from 1850 up to the present day of any place around the world. You can pin it on Google Maps so you can see how Piccadilly Circus has changed. So we can put the photos on. Any of you could do this. You go onto History Pin, you pin your photo on. The point is, young people have the technological ability to do it, older people have the photos. What happens? Said child comes back, needs grandparents' photos, takes grandparents' photos, talks about them, talks about the things. What do you create? Intergenerational activity going on. Does it say that on the website? No. Does it need to? No, because you've created the behavior change within the product or service, implicitly delivering the behavior change that we're looking for. So these are just ways that you can begin to see how you can take the concepts that started out from business in terms of selling products and linking them through, not just in terms of NGOs, but also in terms of how government behaves and we want to behave. One of the issues, though, about implicit behavior change is when people find out, do they get annoyed? Well, I'm really annoyed about that. Whose right have you got to make me do this behavior change? Whose right, whose moral right have you got to sort of create this change in me as a citizen? And that is a challenge. And it's difficult to know who has the right to create behavior change and to move us. Maybe governments do, if they go on a ticket which says we're going to make our citizens healthier, then do they have the right to go and implicitly do that in lots of ways through partnerships? Or maybe, and this is where it's so exciting, maybe technology gives us the answer, which is if something is citizen-led and feels like it's bubbled up from the grassroots, and that there's a movement in a direction by society to want to be healthier, to want to smoke less, to want to recycle more, then maybe that gives society the moral right to find lots of different ways to do it. And I want to give you one example from America, which I think it just exactly exemplifies this. So you've got, I always get this the wrong way around, is it Cyber Monday or Black Friday or whatever? It's Thanksgiving. There we go. Here. So around Thanksgiving, they've got the day where more is bought online than anything else. And so this community centre in New York said, we're spending all this money on the Monday. Why don't we, on the Tuesday, try and get everyone to give? Right? So, you know, just to try and counterbalance some of that. And so they created this idea, Giving Tuesday. They didn't put it into an NGO. They didn't put it into an institution. They created a sort of a movement where they gave the idea away to as many people as possible. They created some tools. They spent $63,000. $63,000. And they just got the idea out to as many influential people as possible. In 70 days, they reckon that $100 million extra was donated on that day as a result of that one impetus. One impetus. Microsoft used it in a different way to Texas used it. All these different people, sectors, businesses, all used it in lots of different ways just to focus people's attention on a thing for something to happen. And as a result, $100 million more was created. And that really is the power that the internet and technology can really provide us with. And I think that that's a really exciting thing, because what it does is it overrides our sort of focus and our belief on different sectors. Well, business and charity and government are all separate, and they're sort of fighting against each other somehow. And the point about technology is it sort of overrides all of that. So when we were presented the idea of Giving Tuesday in the UK, it was sponsored by the Minister for Civil Society, but in the room were businesses, charities, government departments, and all he was saying was, should we do this? Should we give it a go? Should we just let it go in our country and see if we can make this movement happen? And I think that's a really exciting thought for where behaviour change is going. So I'm wrapping up now. So, where does this short journey take us? Well, we're all in the business of behaviour change. I hope we've got that now. That although business is pretty good at it, they've still got quite a lot to learn. Governments are just beginning to recognise the power of behaviour change and its cost effectiveness. And NGOs and civil society are realising that with technology, that behaviour change can have a massive impact without government spending or brand power. So every sector is realising that it has the ability to use behaviour change. And it works best when society is moving in a particular direction. Implicit, incidental, there's lots of different ways that you can do it, and I've tried to talk about some of those, and there's lots of other information on it, but I want you just to think about it in lots of different ways. So why does this matter to you? Final bit. Well, I think it should matter to all of us, because we're all in the business of trying to get people to change stuff, and I think we should know that this stuff's going on and how it could help us. But I think more importantly, as members of Full Circle, I think it's got quite an interesting thought for us, which is, it's not often that you find lots of people from lots of different sectors in incredibly powerful positions, in probably one of the most powerful cities in the world, in one room, potentially able, if we found one behaviour change that we could all corral around, we might be able to think, what is Full Circle's behaviour change idea, and how could we all do something to facilitate that change in our personal lives, in our business lives? Brendan helping me with para orchestra, he knows nothing about music. That's not very fair, actually. He knows quite a lot about music. He's an energy man. But he's passionate about music. But he's helping the para orchestra. We've all got the opportunity in our personal and our business lives, potentially, to take an issue and make it happen. So maybe we want to do that. So you're about to have supper. We've got to talk about something. So why don't we talk about what we want to change and see if we can come up with something and some ideas about how we might be able to do it together, in order that we're not just a talking shop, but we're a doing shop as well. So I've got some starters for 10 for you. How could you get every citizen in Brussels to sign up to organ donation scheme? How could we persuade people to waste less food? Unbelievable. A third of food is wasted. How would you persuade Europeans to swap veg for meat? How could we persuade everyone in Brussels to give their time in their home country to strengthen links to the centre? Brits, did you hear that? How can we get everyone engaged with Giving Tuesday? Why don't we take that as our example? Got to start somewhere. It's a good thing. It's very simple.
We meant it Strike Friday.
There you go. This one's for you, Brendan. How could you challenge the perceptions of the Roma people across Europe? Or perhaps you could start at home. How do you persuade the rest of the world that Brussels is a vibrant hub of Europe? Eat, discuss, think about it, talk. Any questions? I'd love to talk more, but I better stop. Thank you very much.